Hello, firearms friends. You know, if there were any genre of firearms that I was going to dive into today, it would be Civil War carbines or repeaters. We, of course, have the repeaters on the table here. And there might be individual guns or models I like more, but pound for pound as a genre, you are not going to find anything that offers the history, the engineering, just how interesting all the mechanisms are, how far-ranging their impacts are for future designs and future companies, and of course, how affordable they are. We just had a premiere auction with beautiful examples of Civil War carbines that could be had for under $5,000. And these are on our premier auctions. These are world-class examples. I don't know too many genres you can say that of, so hopefully your ears perked up too when you see premier examples like that and you go, that doesn't seem like that much. And that's exactly my point. So let's take a look at some of the repeaters. Of course, very fascinating. All the breech loaders are great too. But then you up the ante by seeing the mechanisms for being able to fire multiple cartridges. And so we're gonna go from some very well known to some lesser known, and we're gonna show you how they work, a few of them along the way. Of course, it wouldn't be any Civil War video about repeaters if we didn't start with perhaps the most well-known and most recognizable, the Henry rifle. There's not too much about them that I can tell you that you don't already know. They're manufactured from 61 through the end of the war, through 65. About 14,000 produced on average. Cost about a month's salary, right around $40, a little bit over. That's a month's salary for a soldier, and of course a lot of them are bought privately by those soldiers, and very few are actually ended up purchased by the federal government for troops. That said, in my hands is one that was purchased by the federal government for troops. How do we know that? Well, two reasons. One, serial number on top, 3700, right behind the rear sight here. It's a nice round number, but it also falls into a range of about 800 that we know were shipped to Washington, D.C. for that famous, 1st D.C. Cavalry Regiment, which were charged with defending Washington, D.C., and they were given Henry rifles to do so. And the other way we know is from the Marshall inspection marks here on the right side of the receiver. We have H for Henry on the frame. We have CGC, that's Charles Chapman, who's also inspecting these. Martially inspected Henrys are a rare variant, but this is comes at a great price point in the S&C auction. Definitely check it out. Their Marshall variants are very, very desirable. That's a good one to have on the table. Next is a gun we don't typically think of as a Civil War arm, but we absolutely should. It's Colt 1855 revolving rifle. And I, first of all, love seeing it this big. Typically you'll see it on the pistols, maybe even a pocket pistol, that design. So to see it like this is almost supersized version of that Root side hammer design. But again, we absolutely should think of these as Civil War repeaters. It is one of two long arms that were in U.S. arsenals at the beginning of the Civil War that were breech loaders. Of course, you had the Halls, which were very outdated, and then you had the Colt revolving rifles. Fantastic accounts of these being used. Most notably, of course, Berdan's sharpshooters were originally shipped Colt revolving rifles, and they very famously refused them in favor of the 59 new model Sharps, of course. There's tales of them taking out 4 Confederates with only 8 shots at 300 yards. And then, of course, they're very famously used at Chickamauga. So in the tales keep going throughout the Civil War. They become a little less and less as more and more arms are available. You see the role of the Colt revolving rifles kind of taking less and as more and more fall out of service, etc. But absolutely a Civil War long arm that we don't typically think of. And as an added bonus, it's a Colt. Colt collecting is an extremely popular genre. So to find one that's a Civil War arm, that is a repeater, that is a breech loader, and of course there's a number of configurations to collect: half stock, full stocks, the sportings, the military configurations, any number. If you just wanted to get a good collection of 55 side hammers, the revolving rifles, you absolutely could. Next on the table, Triplett and Scott repeating carbine. Not many of them made. 5,000 are made, 3,000 as rifles, 2,000 as carbines. The last month of the Civil War is when they're delivered, and they're manufactured by Meriden. Now that's interesting because one of the partners of Meriden is actually Charles Parker, who of course goes on to maybe have a small role in with Parker Brothers shotguns. So if you're expecting high quality from Parker Brothers and something like this, you won't be disappointed. Most of these shipped in that last month are shipped to Kentucky. They're there to help protect and guard William Tecumseh's Sherman supply lines, and this one does have the Kentucky stamp there on the left side. Super fascinating mechanism. I've heard them described as a Rube Goldberg machine, and I don't think they're entirely wrong. Let's take a look. So of course, first you'd load it up, you'd slide this little gate out of the way and loading your magazine tube. I'm gonna flip this around to make life a little easier. Then you can unlock the mechanism with this small button to the left of the hammer, and you begin spinning your entire barrel assembly. Now, as you do so, this ejector or extractor pops out, cams out, and then is then cammed back in by this small scoop in the receiver. As you continue to turn this barrel assembly, you can see on the other side, your barrel is now in front of your magazine. It pops in a cartridge. As you swing it back, the gate slides back into place, locks into place, and you are ready to go. Very fascinating mechanism. I mean, and to see it all work like that, really fascinating. In fact, it's in really good mechanical shape. Very impressive. Not many produced, so they are rare, and of course, a great history helping out William Tecumseh Sherman and his march to sea. Next on the table, the rarest of the guns on the table. Here we have a ball carbine as produced by Lamson. They only produced about 1,002. They were in 1864 as when they started to be produced. A lot of similarities to our triplet here, both in 5650, both 7-shot repeaters, both very low contract numbers, both late war. But it doesn't just have similarities to the triplet. It also, if you just look visually, there's a lot of resemblances as well. This sort of loading gate opening area has a lot of similarities to, I think, an Evans rifle. Of course, very distinct. It doesn't have the visual helical magazine tube running through the stock. If you look at the bolt and how that operates, very similar to a Palmer carbine. There's a little tooth on it that slips into the receiver here. And that actually shouldn't be surprising because Lamson makes both the ball carbine and the Palmer, that very earliest bolt action, makes them both in the same factory. They are both about 1,000 produced. Also, neither the ball nor the Palmer are shipped until after the Civil War. Not really their fault. The government changed calibers from 44, then they had standardized to the 5650, the Spencer rimfire round. So not really their fault, but not going to be fired in anger because it's not delivered until after the Civil War, unfortunately. And it operates, so we've mentioned those two similarities, similar to the Palmer, similar to the Evans, also bears a lot of similarities to the Winchester and the Henry, of course, at the time, and it should. It's 1864. These things are well-known designs. So we can bring it up here. We have nice markings on the side from Lamson Company, Windsor, Vermont, U.S. stamp, very big on their balls patent. Short, compact little carbine, good weight to it. If we bring that forward, it actually, you can see the mechanism. It's actually the breech split. So this lower part comes down. We have an ejector, spring-loaded ejector, ready to fling shells out. And this is also how you'd load it. So you put them in, and by the way, that's where it starts to resemble the Henry and the Winchester, is that we're loading those shells into a receiver, and they're filling in underneath the barrel. We're not going into a buttstock-based magazine here. And of course, elevates it from there, puts it right back in. Everything seals promptly, and as mentioned, like that Palmer, we have a small notch here on our hammer, fits into a small notch there, which fires the rimfire cartridge. Again, just a really neat design that I don't want to say borrows from a lot of places, because that would imply that all those were first, but definitely you can see the influences and the technologies and the ideas that were flowing at the time, especially in our Northeast gun designers. And of course, what video on Civil War repeaters and carbines would be complete without perhaps the king of them all, the Spencer carbine. We've kind of bookended it with the most well-known, the Henry and the Spencer, and also like the Henry, there's probably not too much about the Spencer. I can't tell you don't already know about it. They're produced from 1860 through 69. There's 200,000 of them produced in that period of time, 95,000 of which are purchased by their federal government. They are also 7-shot repeaters, like a couple others on our table here. They're initially chambered in 56, but there's a number of chamberings that are going to subsequently follow that. Interestingly enough, when I say 56, it's not like our common current day nomenclature like a 45-70 where it's 45 caliber and 70 is our powder charge. 56 is the actual diameter of the case at the base, and then the diameter of the case at the top. So you have 56, 52, 5650, and as any number of them. So no shortage of collecting options for Spencer collectors, and we'll get into that later. They're started produced in 1860, but they don't actually see issuance until 1863. And there's, of course, a famous story about that where Spencer finally is able to meet Abraham Lincoln because he's being kind of pushed off by the Ordnance Department, demonstrates it to Lincoln, a firing demonstration for the President of the United States of America. Oh, how times have changed. Lincoln wants to adopt him on the spot, tells his head of the Ordnance Department to, yes, you're going to start issuing these. He defies Lincoln's order, and then Lincoln gets a new head of the Ordnance Department. So there's a reason these aren't really seeing issuance until 1863. But after that, of course, their impact is far and wide, not only through the Civil War, but in the later Indian Wars. You have the Franco-Prussian War, you have them in Japan, and the Bosin War. So these are making international impacts. This is a particularly interesting example. We have a model 1865, some actually remnants of case hardening here. This is grayed out, but the protected areas, there's still some really nice color on the case hardening with the saddle ring, of course, here. You've probably heard it rattling on the far side. An Erskine Allen cartouche here right behind it. This is also a Burnside carbine. Burnside has to begin producing these to help keep up with the demand. He produces about 30,000 of them. This one also has the Stabler cutoff device. Now, nothing would have made that head of the Ordnance Department happier than to know that these would eventually be equipped with a Stabler cutoff device. As with most repeaters and all throughout U.S. military history, people are worried about expending ammunition too quickly. And so here we have the solution to this very small Stabler cutoff device. As is, when you cock it, it only allows you to cycle the weapon that far. That's not far enough down for the action to drop for a round to come up from the magazine in the buttstock. But when we give it a twist and get that out of the way, and it's just a simple metal stop, then we can cycle the rifle fully. See how much further that comes down. Now a bullet can pass through, and it can scoop it up and push it into the chamber and be ready. So, nice cartouche, saddle ring carbine, Stabler cutoff device. There's a lot to love about this Spencer, and with any Spencer. Like I said, you could be a Civil War carbine collector, repeater collector, and collect Spencers. You could also just be a Spencer collector. There's lengths, there's contracts, there's rifles, there's carbines, there's things like the Stabler device. You could get the Blakesley tubes. There's just any number of things you could collect with a Spencer. And I hope I've shown you that's true not just of the Spencer, but almost any of the guns and Civil War repeaters on this table. Whether you're looking for just the carbines, whether you're looking for muzzle loaders, whether you're the breech loaders, whether you're looking for the repeaters, whether you're looking for handguns. We haven't even started talking about the handguns of the Civil War. No shortage. Obviously, the carbines and the breech loaders and the repeaters I feel pretty strongly about, where you can find a lot to love for not a lot of money. You can see them all in this October 4th through 6th Sporting Collector Firearms Auction. October 3rd is the preview day. Boy, did we make it an event. Come visit us down there in Bedford, Texas. Come look at almost 5,000 guns. Not too many places you can do that, especially when they're as interesting, fascinating, historic, and as high condition as this. And of course, we're going to sell them all in just 3 days. So head over to the website, take a look at some of these interesting items, place your bids. Until next time, keep your powder dry.